Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Inside the Warriors Cup, the debut alongside the Gooch, James Guccione. This is Dan Devone. What we're going to do every week, maybe a couple of times a week, we'll detail everything that's happening in the world of Warriors Cup, also the latest news in Muay Thai combat sports. We'll also take a look back at Warriors Cup 71, as well as get you ready and tease for what's happening in Warriors Cup 72. But first things first, Gooch, I want you, just for those that aren't familiar with who you are, just give them some of a background, how you got affiliated into Muay Thai boxing, and then how you transitioned to becoming one of the most influential promoters in the Muay Thai game today.
Thanks for that, Dan. Dan, it's good to be here with you. So, yeah, I started fighting about, I'd say, over 10 years ago. I got mixed up. A friend of mine was fighting, and I saw him do it. I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to do that. And, that's it. I joined the gym, and the rest is history. I fell in love with the sport. I started fighting. And then while I was fighting, I started to become a cut man. I started to get involved in all the gyms and the relationships of all the people around. And then I eventually became a matchmaker. And here I am as a promoter. So, we got the Warriors Cup here, me and my two partners, Chris Tran and Eddie Marini. Me and Eddie been through a lot. We were with Friday Night Fights together. And now, here we are with the Warriors Cup. We're taking it to the next level.
Yeah, we'll get Eddie Marini on board one of these shows. I know
one of these days we'll get Chris. We'll get Chris on board too.
Yeah, Chris. All right, we'll get Chris on as well.
We'll get Chris talking. Yeah, we're gonna have to get Chris talking. Yeah.
And of course, these guys are known as the three pillars. And when it comes to the outside, they just simply cornered the market. I always talk to you about this. Is that, and sometimes when we get in these big meetings and we're talking to investors, and then you and Eddie just start busting out Muay Thai and Warriors Cup, I just sit there. I'm like, these dudes are amazing, what it is that they do and what they know. So, look at man, we'll talk a lot about where we're at in terms of the Warriors Cup, state of affairs. But let's just get into, first of all, just to look back at Warriors Cup 71. What did you see as the fight of the night, if you will, in terms of the main events? I know what it is that I thought were two guys that brought it, and that was Sanchez and Matias, but we'll detail those two. Curious, first of all, what you thought of 71. You were two of the fighters and one of the fights that jumped out at you.
I'll tell you, Dan, I'm impressed. You know what I mean? Because you're new to the Muay Thai world, right? You're not new to the world of sports, right? Sports and commentary and what you're doing and what you do best, right? I don't think you gave yourself a proper introduction, right? Your background and everything that you do. But coming into the Muay Thai world, for you to pick out that fight says a lot. Says a lot. You're learning the sport already. You're flowing right in there, because that was an amazing display of Muay Thai. That fight was unbelievable. Sanchez, he's in there. He's technical, beautiful Muay Thai. Marco's up and coming. He's young. He's hungry. And that fight was classic. That was beautiful. There was not, those guys really went at it, and that was amazing. I was gonna say the same fight. What else? What other one?
So here, quick out. Question for you.
I'm gonna take it to my notes.
Yeah, look at you. No, what's the beautiful thing about Muay Thai is that, yeah, I'm somewhat of a novice, but you're right. It's sports at the end of the day. And what I appreciate about Muay Thai is that you got all the different styles, man. And when I saw Marco, he's like a technician. Like, that dude has no wasted movie. He's from me to you in terms of his kicks, his jabs. And Sanchez, I've watched enough conventional boxing. And Sanchez, man, he's got that big smile. He's like, he wrote his own play. This dude's a Broadway guy. He's into dance. And I'm like, holy crap, he's going to get his ass.
And he loves what he does. He loves what he does. And you know what?
Here's the thing. He's like, he counters so well. Like, you're seeing Marco just pressure him and dictate the tempo, but he was sneaky good. And by the end of that fight, I had no idea. And it came down to a decision. While I thought it was Marco initially, Sanchez, in terms of his counterpunching, it was good from beginning to
end. And that's the thing too, right? It's like, that says a lot about Muay Thai in itself, because you get a guy like Sanchez, right? He had a losing record, 0-2, right? In boxing and all these other combat sports, MMA, that's like protect your future time, none of that matters in Muay Thai. We fight whoever's in front of us, right? That's what happens in Muay Thai. And that's what makes it such a special sport, right? You're watching boxing. Boxing's only exciting at the highest level of the best top guys fighting each other right now. When you get every other fight happening, it doesn't matter because there's a guy that's supposed to lose, and he usually does. 85% of the time, that guy that's supposed to lose loses. And that's not the case in Muay Thai.
Yeah.
You got guys that are fighting fair fights. That's what it is. There's two guys, fair fights. And then you get a fight like this one, right? Where Sanchez came in with a losing record, fought two hard fights before, right? I think he was 0-2. He's coming in, right? He's not looking for, give me a layup fight, give me an easy. No, he goes after Marco and fights an amazing fight against him. One of the best fights we've seen, right? So right now, he put another loss on his record. That loss means nothing. That loss means nothing in a grand scheme of things. It shows what the sport's really about. The guys fighting each other, the fights that we want to see happen, the exciting fights, the fights that mean something. This wasn't a one-side, on paper, right? In boxing, it looks like it's a one-sided fight sometimes, right? No. These are two guys going at it, for the sport, because they love it, because that's what matters. At the end of that, I had a drink with Jeremy at the bar, nothing, like you said, nothing but smiles, right? Because he knew he gave it his all in there. He fought an amazing fight that people are going to remember, right? At the end of the day, everybody's going to remember that fight. And that's what matters, right? The records don't matter. What matters is everybody remembering the fight.
Yeah, there was some question as to whether, let's face it, you spend that much time in California. Did he go soft? It's been more than 4 years since he's been back in New York and doing his thing in Melrose, but I think he answered that question right off the bat. He's the same dangerous guy. I got a question for you. Going back to your fighting days, when you're taking on a guy like Marco, and I do want to tease what it is that we're going to see with Banks and Robinson. I mean, we'll get to Warriors Cup 72, but the southpaw, when you're taking on a left-hander, what is it that you got to do in terms of a fighter? We always talk about the footwork, cutting off the ring. What's your game plan when you're taking on somebody who's dangerous like Marco, who's a southpaw?
You got to make sure you don't circle into the left and end up trapped in a bad spot. And you got to lead with your right a little bit. You got to start to lead with your right side. And you got to start to right side like me. I'm a left side kicker. My left kick was pretty good. My left kick was a lot better than my right side kick, and it didn't do well with southpaws. I always got beat up with southpaws. But that just goes to show, you know what I mean? You got to watch that angle. You can't get trapped by them. You fight orthodox against southpaw, you could get trapped really easy with a southpaw, and it happens. It's happened to me.
Yeah, so another southpaw, and then we'll leave Warriors Cup 71 alone and get into 72. I can't wait. Once again, September 19th, we'll give you the details coming up in just a bit. But David Agbaji, hey, listen, we can put up a comment section. If people want to give, I'd have to put him in the top 2 or 3 in terms of most electric, popular fighters. He's obviously got, the matinee good looks, Calvin Klein model. But when he steps into the ring, Agbaji's he's electric, man. He oozes with athleticism. And he's another southpaw. And talk about his fight against Rivera, because he went to work. And it leads us into the guy that he lost to that we're going to see back in Warriors Cup coming up in a couple of weeks. But talk about Agbaji and as in his impressive match in Warriors Cup 71.
I mean, David's a warrior. David always has been a warrior, always will be a warrior. Our hardest thing with David is having to tell him not to take super hard fights because, we're like, oh, maybe the next one. You know what I mean? Maybe the next one. He went after Dimitri. He wanted that fight. He lost that fight. He won. Then he wanted to fight right back. I said, whoa, hold on a second, right? And then he ends up fighting Rivera, like you said. And Rivera was tough, game fighter. It was a great fight. It was a great fight, but with David, he's a warrior, right? At the end of the day, he runs by like the old, the old warrior spirit. He has that mentality, and he really cares about it. And he's an honest guy that just wants tough fights. He never wants an easy fight, and we've given him hard fights, and it shows. And then he's stepped up. I've been promoting in one way or another David for a very long time now, because I was involved with Friday Night Fights before, and then, he moved over to Warriors Cup with us, and we've seen David grow as a fighter, but he's always been the same. He's always been, where sometimes we'll throw him, he's saying, is he tough enough? I want somebody harder. I want somebody better. I want the best of the best. He's always asked for the best of the best, and then now he's keep trucking along with that. That's the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like, let's see what happens. And now we see what Dimitri gets, right? Dimitri's getting a really tough guy, a really, really guy that's going to be, he's world, he's the only other guy that's I got experience like on that level to really fight with him, right? Because Dimitri comes from, Dimitri comes from like a different place of experience, right? When you look at the records, I think he's 40-10, 40-15, something like that, or 15-10. I don't know his exact record, but it's a lot of fights, but it's a lot of fights on like a super high level, right? So it makes a big difference, right? When you're fighting on that world-class level, it's like you can't compare it really to anything else, And David stepped up, and he stepped up willingly, and then he lost a fight. He asked to step up again. He was like, I want Dimitri again. I was like, well, just wait, we'll get there. You know what I mean? We'll get there. And sometimes, some of the American fighters are at a little bit of a disadvantage because they haven't had as much experience from a young age. Like you get that in Thailand. These guys are fighting a lot of fights young age, just racking them in. We're starting to catch up to the rest of the world with that. I think it's really starting to catch up. We got these young fighters. We got a couple young fighters in the States now who are young and are starting to really rack up wins and fights where saying, all right, this guy, I can't wait to see what he looks like when he's 25 years old and he's got 50 fights. It's going to be a different scenario, but we're catching up to everybody else and we're starting to even the playing field. But Dimitri's world class. That's true world. You hear world champion a lot said, you know what I mean? And we try not to say it often at all because bothers me, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of guys that aren't world champions, right? But Dimitri's world champion. He's world class, so that's the real deal right there. So we'll see what happens with him and Marco. I think it's going to be a really, really exciting fight.
Yeah. So you're making reference obviously to Dimitri and David Agbaji in the last time they met. The last time we saw Dimitri in the Warriors Cup was the finale from a year ago. I want you to just, for those that didn't see it, one of the most vicious endings, I think, you talk about a knockout. It was that spinning blind elbow that and Agbaji the minute he had contact, he face planted like I haven't seen anybody in Warriors Cup do in recent memory. Talk about, first of all, and Dimitri scares the hell out of me, man. He's got
scary dude,
right? But he's got that Belarusian Russian. He doesn't smile. He's stoic, but he's a
super nice guy. Super nice guy.
Dude, but he's a guy that when he gets up in the morning, he just looks like he's coming to kick your ass. And he went to work on Agbaji. But just talk about that move. The last time we saw him in the Warriors Cup and what happened with him and Dave.
Yeah, so he set it up beautifully. He was picking his shot. It wasn't one of these, sometimes it happens, right? Sometimes a knockout happens where it's the guy went for it and he got lucky, right? And people say, oh, he got lucky. That situation wasn't. We can never say that about what happened there because Dimitri was very methodical, very planned. He was picking his shots. He knew there was times that he was good and he went for it at the right times. And that's how he caught him. He caught him clean. And that's the name of this game, right? It's a scary thing. Me as a promoter was the scariest, time I've ever had. You know what I mean? I was really, nervous for what was going on. David went down. David, who's somebody I care for, not as just an athlete, but just as a person and a friend. It really was like affected me and everybody else in the room. But at the end of the day, it was like, this was a world-class fight, and these things happen. That's what we're in. We're in the fight game, and people get knocked out. This is what happens.
Yeah, I think to your point, that sometimes you see guys just go for broke. They're just, they're swinging some wild, roundhouse left that happens to connect or a kick, but this was just like, you're right. You could just see that he was setting it up 2 moves before, and Dimitri is on that level, man.
Yeah.
He's gone a whole nother level in terms of the way he approaches things. So Warriors Cup 72, one of the most vicious, one of the most entertaining Muay Thai fighters will be on display when we're talking about Dimitri Varats taking on Marcos Vazquez. You don't want to miss any of that. All right, let's get into Warriors Cup 72 and specifically this kid, Todd Banks, because I'm probably like a lot of the consumers out there, man. I'm excited about this kid. He is so damn powerful. The knockouts, the sweeps on this guy, he is the definition of a rising star in Muay Thai. And then we always talk about, the matchup here. It's something's got to give because Robinson's got that reach. He's a perfect product out of evolution. He just takes care of business. How do you see this thing going down? And I don't know if you can do this as a promoter, but who would you give an advantage to? And that's a tough call at this point.
So I'm not going to give it the advantage in terms of winning or losing, but I will say John Robinson has fought at a higher level, in my opinion. But Todd Banks has been consistent and been scary. You know what I mean? So it's one to really watch out for because, like you said, I do believe John Robinson has fought at a higher level. That's that class, that level where we really see, where are we at? Are we on an even playing field across everywhere? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? But you get a guy like Todd Banks. I mean, I'm not saying that I think John's going to win because Todd is a scary dude. He's good. He's talented. Then he goes off to Thailand and he ends up doing really well out there. And I feel, it kind of tweaked me a little bit because I watched some of the fights too. And I know I've been good at like addressing fights in Thailand. Like I just saw one recently. I'm not going to say the name, but there's a guy out there and I watched him fight in Thailand. And I was like, who are you fighting in Thailand? Like me, I'm out of shape now. I haven't fought in how long? Like, could I have gone out there and done okay in that fight? Probably, you know what I mean? But then I watched Todd Banks fights and that's not the case. He was in real fights. He was in real fights with real opponents, real skilled guys, and he did well. You know what I mean? So that kind of like took me to the point to say, all right, this guy really is serious. You know what I mean? He's not just the Buffalo phenomenon, because that's the difference, right? Are you the best in Buffalo, or are you the best Muay Thai fighter in the United States, right? And the thing that I really feel bad about with this fight for these two guys is this is a title-worthy fight, but it's both of their pro debuts, and I know. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say that we don't do that, right? We don't just throw titles out. We have like, criteria, and these guys now, once you go to the pros, right? Like these guys, that's a title worthy fight, right? Like whoever wins this fight, they're title worthy in that weight class, but it's a pro debut. So all that goes out the window. It's just a pro debut. So basically both of these guys, and that's another factor too, that it turned into a 3-round fight. So most of our fights are 5 rounds. And even when it's not title fights, the pros usually 5 rounds. But this got turned into a 3-round fight. So that could play a part. That could definitely play a part in an advantage to Todd, to be honest with you. Because John Robinson has been fighting title fights. He's been fighting 5-round fights. When you're a 5-round fighter, you're a 5-round fighter. And I've seen it happen more times than not, where a 5-round fighter goes into a 3-round fight and a fight ends, they didn't get hurt, and they're like just getting warmed up. And they're like, shit, it's done. And I'm like, yeah, you ran out of time. like, all right, it's over. You didn't do it. You know what I mean? But that happens so often where you get a 5-round fighter because you get your gear. Like I remember the first time I fought 5 rounds, and I was like, I'll never forget. It was the end of the 3rd round. I went to the stool. I sat down and I said, okay, I'm done. And my coach said, no, this is your part. This is a 5-round fight. You have 2 more rounds. And I said, no, I'm done. And I was done. Like my muscle memory of fight told me that this fight is over. This is what I've always done, right? I had done 12 fights or however many it was at 3 rounds. At the end of 3 rounds, your body says, you did it. Like, it's cool. You did it. You got in there. You got through this. We're over. We're done. We can go home now. We can have a beer and celebrate. But it was like, no, we're going back out there. We're going to keep fighting, And that wasn't what my body was used to. And it took an adjusting of a couple 5-round fights to try to tell my body, like, this is what we're doing for 5 rounds. But it works the opposite way too. When you're a 5-round fighter, to start off slower, to, pick your shots different a little bit early and then save it for the championship rounds in the end. So when you get that taken away from you, you have to flip back to being a 3-round fighter. It could be a factor, it could be a factor in this fight.
That's an interesting point. And so if I was to read you correct, you're going to give the experience to Robinson, rightfully so, the handyman, pride of evolution. And Banks is sort of this unknown wild card. We'll know a lot more about him if he can take out John Robinson. But as a veteran fighter, when you use the experience word, what does that mean specifically if you're taking on someone like that at Todd Banks?
I mean, he's going to have to neutralize him, and he's going to have to adapt to his game plan a little bit, right? Because like we said, it's a 3-round fight. So, I know Todd's coming out strong. I know Todd's
from Jump Street. He's coming out.
Todd is coming out strong, and John is going to have to jump on that, or not start looking for round 4 and 5 and say, where are they? Where's round 4 and 5? I need them. You know what I mean? Because that, like I said, that happens all too often. You're a slow starter. You weather the storm, right? He could maybe weather the storm, right? He weathers the Todd storm, but then it's like, but you might have lost that round, right? And then you need to say, all right, well, I'm still good. Like, I'm still good. He didn't hurt me. He's getting tired. Now it's my turn. Well, your time is up. The judges are making the decision, So that I think could be a factor in this fight. Yeah.
The other fight, of course, that we detailed and talked about a little bit about is Dimitri Varats, obviously taking on Marcos Vasquez. And we talk a lot about Varats, and rightfully so. Like I said, this guy he looks like a fighter. I mean, this is the guy, I think that if you built a Muay Thai fighter in the lab, it would come out looking like this cat. He's all business. There's not a real weakness in his game and his approach. But let's throw some love to the Bolivian and talk about Vasquez, who, and I don't know, I don't got a line out of Vegas, but I'm seeing as a slight underdog. But what shot do you give Vasquez coming up on the 19th of September?
I'll tell you, I give him a shot completely. That guy will step in there with anybody, proven by stepping into this fight. And that is, that says right over anybody that signs the paperwork against Dimitri, it says a lot about you. It says a lot about where you're at. But, he's been going through. I mean, Marco's has been fighting everybody. He's been fighting everybody at that high level. He's a pro. He's a seasoned pro. He's not a brand new pro just getting into this. All his fights have been professional for a long time now. So he knows the game. He knows what he's getting himself into. And he's going to train hard and come strong. You know what I mean? I'll tell you, as it comes to like fighters here in the States, because although Dimitri's here in the States, I don't really consider him an American fighter because he's not. You know what I mean? He hasn't been here for that long. He comes from, he's world class, When, whoever beats him from here, it's going to say the ultimate thing about them. You know what I mean? It's like, that's going to be, that's the tipping point of you're really a world class, when you say world title, well, that's a world title. You know what I mean? So, and Marcos has an opportunity to do that. And, not a lot of people have those opportunities in their entire career. Right. So Marcos having that opportunity to do that and to take that away from him. I mean, I'm sure he's training hard and he's going to do everything he can to make it happen. I'm excited to watch.
And we talk about maybe the experience advantage in the Robinson fight coming up against Todd is somewhat distinct in that he'll have the experience. I don't think you can necessarily say that about these two guys because, as I mentioned, Vasquez, he's been around the block. And
he's been in there. He's been in there.
So is Dimitri.
Yeah.
So two experienced fighters, and again, man, this is what Warriors Cup is all about. I want to talk to you about a promoter for a moment. If you could just, pull back the curtain and take us inside as much as you can without giving away, the secret sauce, because I know how competitive the space is. But in order to land that fight with Robinson, what is it that you got to do when you going to Todd's agent? Do you have a relationship with the fighter itself? Like, How do you broker that? Like, who's the first phone call to? Is there sweet talking? What is it you got to do to make these things happen?
Yeah, I mean, that one's interesting because it's gone back and forth so many times. So it was, it's not like I've talked to his coach before about it. We've gone back and forth. The dates didn't work and this and that. It was just timing was bad. Then he was out of the country. Then he was back. Then he's reached out, so that one was kind of all over the place and it happened, you know what I mean? So that one ends up happening where it was like, we're looking out and it was between another promoter and we're like, oh, well, maybe I'm waiting for a fight somewhere else. And we're like, all right, well, this fight's here waiting for you. We've been trying to make this for years, you know what I mean? But because in the amateurs, it made sense, right? We've always struggled to find opponents for John, and Todd made perfect sense, And the thing, which is a crazy thing, was for a while I thought that the reason that fight wasn't going to happen was because of the weight. Because Todd was fighting at like 175 and John was like 168, 170. And then in his last fight, Brandon Levi said to me, nah, he's going up. We're not doing this anymore. He's going up. We're going 175. I said, oh, perfect. Now I don't even have to worry about it. And once I heard that in my head, actually, when that conversation happened, it clicked in my head. I'm like, Todd Banks, no problems now. So there was nothing else going to stop that fight from happening because it instantly hit my head. I was like, oh, now there's nothing stopping a Todd Banks fight, because I thought for an instant, it could be, all right, well, are we going to not make this fight over 5 pounds? One guy's 175, one guy's 170. We're not going to do that, but these guys knew for a long time that fight was going to happen. And now it happens as their pro debut, which is kind of, it's a little poetic too, right? You know what I mean? It's like the two guys, and they both, make their, although Todd technically is a pro in Thailand, it's his pro debut in the States, which we look at a little different because it happens, right? Guys go to Thailand and fight pro out there because there's no such thing as amateur out there. You're in Thailand, you're fighting pro. It doesn't make you a pro in the States. So guys come here, it's like you could still fight in the amateurs. You still have our level of amateur fighting in the States is so high that you could still come here and fight amateur. But once you make that decision, you say, no, now I'm a pro. I'm going to continue that record and push it on to the States. Like that's the same thing Marco did. And that's what Todd Banks is doing as well.
Yeah. Listen, man, I'm not promoting this thing. I'm just a fan watching it so I can say these things, but I don't know if it'd be considered an upset. This kid, Todd Banks, I think is making a name for himself. And I think he's taking out John Robinson. As difficult as that might be, Robinson's got the experience, the reach, but there's a twinkle in this kid's eye, man, that I think big things are in store for this guy. All right, let's not leave the women out. Warriors Cup 72, Stephanie and Vanessa Hernandez. A lot going on in this fight as well. Sort of take us inside, if you will, and get us ready for this big, huge bout as well.
So this is I'm really happy that this fight got made. You know what I mean? Because Stephanie was struggling to find an opponent. Stephanie was up for our title and her opponent was pregnant, which, in New York State, they give a pregnancy test to every female fighter in the locker room right before the fight, just to ensure that they're not pregnant and they didn't know it. Well, she was pregnant and she didn't know it. I think that baby's like 1.5 years now. Cute kid. I see that kid on Instagram, super cute kid. And that came as a surprise in our locker room. So Stephanie's all gloved up. She's wrapped up. She's ready to fight for the title. Stephanie's experienced. Stephanie's a little older than she looks. So you don't really know that she's older than you would think she is when you see her. But so, she's fighting for a title. She's there. And then boom, finds out her opponent's pregnant. She's not fighting that night. Take the gloves off. That's it. And then, she fought for a Gamma title. So she fought for a different title than the Warriors Cup title. And, since then, it's been really hard to find Stephanie an opponent. Since then, Vanessa's up and coming. So basically, she's not at the experience level of Stephanie. She's maybe not even at the experience level of most of our title fights. But at that weight, with these women, sometimes we have to bend on our normal parameters because there's not as many of them. All these women end up fighting each other, right? It's what happens. They fight each other 3-4 times and they keep going through it. And Vanessa has been fighting strong, fighting well. and she's ready to step up. And we're like, this is great. Let's do this. And of course, we're going to put a title on it. So we're excited to see that fight. I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Like I said, Stephanie's got experience on her, but Vanessa's got a little bit of youth and, you know, a little bit of that younger fire.
So that's all coming up on Warriors Cup 72. You know, again, you may not say this, but during the summer, I come from a world of television, and whether it's streaming or the networks, programming always hurts in the summertime because everybody's obviously doing their thing, they're on vacation. I was just in Paris, believe it or not, for work. Paris shuts down in August. Literally, all the locals board up their homes and their shops and they leave. I don't know where the hell they go, but nobody's in Paris. And so my point is that when we get to Warriors Cup 72, you're getting into fall, another packed house. It's going to be one of those that, you know, put an asterisk next to this one on the calendar. You don't want to miss what's going to go off. We've talked about just some of the key matchups, but I'm not even really scratching the surface. Talk about some other fights that maybe I haven't mentioned that are part of just what's going to be a crazy card coming up on September 19th.
Before we scoot back to that, I want to go back a show. We did that. We did the recap already, but I want to go back to a fighter we overlooked for a second. And that's my man, Chase Brooks, right?
Oh, so the kid.
That's my man, Chase
Shout
Brooks.
out Tampa. Come on, man.
Shout out Tampa. Shout out Chase. Shout out Chase calls me. So Chase signed to us, right? He signed a promotional deal with Warriors Cup, right? He's fully committed to us, and we're fully committed to him. And Chase calls me every day looking for an opponent ready to fight. This kid is so ready to fight, and I love it. This kid's got the hunger in it, right? So we had him as a champion in the amateurs, and then he didn't fight for a while for us. I don't know, or maybe just not at all. I'm not sure what was going on. But then, you know, he's ready to make his pro debut. He fights for us. We had a fight fall out. You know, we went back and forth. But then I found this guy, Kellerman, for him, right? And this guy was interesting because I had never really heard of him. All right. He came at us with a couple pro fights. They were in Thailand. Yeah. And I looked, you know, and I'm like, all right, I wasn't really sure, to be honest. I wasn't really sure the level he was fighting out in Thailand. But I'm like, even if he was fighting at a lower level in Thailand, it's still pro fight. So he's coming against a pro debut. So it made sense, right? From a promoter matchmaker angle, it made sense. We tried it. And Chase came in strong on him. You know, he kind of, you know, he was very aggressive. He was also, you know, not being crazy, but he was strong and came forward and, you know, took Tyson out. You know, we're going to get Tyson back too. We're going to get Tyson back and we're going to put him on a match, you know, that's going to make a lot more sense with him. And I'm excited for that. And Chase right away, right? When's the next one? What are we doing? When's the next fight? Who do you got for me? Who do you got for me? Who do you got for me? And Chase has been dropping names. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say the names he's dropping, but he's dropping crazy names. Like, gee, I'm going after this guy. I'm going after this guy. And they're experienced guys. You know, he's not scared. So I know the excitement of fights coming from Chase is going to be top notch because he's not one of these guys who's going to look to where I send an opponent to him and then he, you know, you have it where I send an opponent. Oh, no, I don't know. Maybe on the next one. That means it's never happening, right? He's like, yeah, right. He's like, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm ready. Let's do it. So I'm excited for what's going to come with Chase Brook coming out of Tampa.
Well, let's get him on the show. Matter of fact, just once again to let the people know at home, what we're going to be doing every week is obviously breaking down the upcoming fights, taking a look back, but also bringing fighters on so that you can meet them, get to know them from a personal level, who they are, just sort of what motivated them to get into the sport. Not only that, but just, you know, from a family life or how they spend their personal time, and just so you get an opportunity to go behind the curtain and meet these guys. And Chase Brooks and my man Todd Banks are two of the guys that we want to get on here so that you can meet. But Brooks he's interesting because, and I didn't mean to overlook the kid, but he is a guy that, I mean, the vicious knees to the dome on Kellerman. But I don't even call it unorthodox, but you speak to this. He keeps the hands down low. Now, obviously, there's not one set style, just like anything else in Muay Thai. There's the varying styles. But the first thing that jumped out at me is that I don't know whether it's confidence, but he's got those hands down. Your approach to a fighter like that keeps his hands down, and what do you think of somebody like that?
It's confidence. It was, I think in that one, it was confidence, but it could be, you know, it could turn, you know, I was one of those fighters that used to drop my hands. maybe we'll bring one of my coaches on here one of these days, and they'll tell you, they used to get mad at me because I'll put my hands down. Look, we'll see, Ryan. We're going to try to get this clip up, right? We got Ryan in the background, random bouts.
Shout out to our producer.
Shout out to our producer, Ryan. Ryan in the background, my man taking care of everything Warriors Cup. He's cutting all the highlights. He's doing everything. Warriors Cup TV. This is my man, Ryan. Ryan, random bouts on Instagram. Give the man a follow. But Ryan in the background, what was I talking about?
You're talking about your hands down. We're talking about.
Oh, yeah. We're going to find that clip. We're going to get a clip of me with my hands down. I got a good one. I just dropped my hands, but it was actually my rib got hurt like pretty bad. And it like took a second. And I was like, it would have looked weird if I would have taken a knee like randomly. So instead I just dropped my hands and I let the guy tee off on me. Pop, 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 pop. He dropped me with an elbow. But I just went down and they were like, what was that? I was like, I was going down anyway. I went down in flames, But that was the kind of fight.
Move on, really quick, man. You played this for me in a bar once. And seriously, when I heard it on your phone, I was like, is the bartender cracking walnuts? What the hell was that? When you broke your jaw in the garden, were the hands down or did you get caught? But
no, actually that one, my hands were up. I had got hurt. We'll get that clip too, Ryan. We're going to start playing clips on here. Can you have those capabilities? We'll find out later. We have those capabilities to go to a clip. We're going to get high tech on this podcast. But basically, I had got hurt with a shot and I was backing up, and actually the kick went right over my hand was up and it went right over. It was like, boom. I mean, it would have went through my glove anyway. It was kind of, but it was right there.
Did you know immediately?
Yeah, I knew immediately. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So if we're done with Mr. Brooks, you got a standing invitation to join us here on the show.
I'm going to get Brooks on. We're going to get Brooks on.
We'll meet the young man. We want to meet a lot of these young fighters. But I also want to get back once again to what's right around the corner. We're just a couple of weeks away from Warriors Cup 72. The dance, Melrose Ballroom, New York City. And just we talked about some of the main events, some of the title fights, some of the key fighters, some of the women as well, Vanessa Hernandez. Give me a sleeper. Give me a match that maybe we should be keeping an eye on.
It's not a – hold on a second. Let me just look at this. So it's not a sleeper, but we need to talk about, once again, you know why it almost got bypassed on this podcast for a second, because the man is the most consistent dude, but Franz Pierre. Franz Pierre is on this show. We
take it for granted, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say for a second, like I'm like, oh shit. I actually was just looking at it and I was like, is this an old card? No. Yeah, Franz is on. And let's talk. He's fighting Kendrick Latchman, right? So Kendrick, so a little background on it, right? Franz is a killer. He's just fighting. He'll fight anybody. He's, crazy story. We had that fight from a fighter from Australia who was supposed to fight Malcolm. So we flew this guy here from Australia. We put him in a hotel for 12 days. And he was supposed to fight Malcolm Hill, who got sick, tried to make weight, went through it, didn't make weight, but was at weigh-ins. We thought the fight was still going to happen. The fight wasn't going to happen. He was depleted. He was really sick. It wasn't happening. Franz Pierre walks into Melrose Ballroom to corner a fighter. And he goes, oh, Malcolm's not fighting? He goes, yeah, I'm pretty close to weight. He goes, I'll fight the Australian. Now, this was a WBC world title, right? And he just walked in that day. Like, he was like, what did he eat pizza for lunch? Like, who knows? Like, right? He just walked in and he was like, I'll go home. I'll get my mouthpiece. He was like, I'll fight tonight. And I tried to make that happen. We tried to make that happen. We were going back and forth and we're talking to the Australian. He was like, what do you mean? He was like, what do you mean? You got this Haitian guy that's ready to fight me on 3 hours notice. I was like, yeah. I was like, this guy's ready to go, And at the end of the day, it didn't work out. It didn't make sense. There was a lot of hurdles with that happening, but we tried. But, all the hurdles that made that not happen that night, the one that wasn't was Franz Pierre, because he was just game. His emotions never changed. And he was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, put anybody in front of me on 3 hours notice and I'll fight in front of the world and be ready for the highest level fighter you brought from another country. No big deal. You know, so that says everything you need to know about Franz Pierre. And this guy, Kendrick, I don't know if anybody's seen the last time, I forget who was he? He knocked somebody out and then he did a backflip off the top rope. And we have a picture, Ryan, we got to get that picture. See, we got to work on this. Every podcast, we got to be able to circle into pictures. You know what I mean? And be like, oh, that picture, you know? But it was a backflip. And we got a picture. He did a full-blown backflip in the ring. This guy's exciting. And then we set him up for a WBC title fight against Waleed. Rising star, world class, Waleed Snoozy. So basically, Waleed and him were supposed to fight, and Waleed was fighting in Ifamas, and he broke his nose or something. Something happened. He got hurt. I think he broke his nose. So he just needed a little time. So Waleed needed a little time. In the meantime, Kendrick's like, I'm ready to go. Yeah, we got Franz. Franz is always ready to go. That's one of the best fights to enter our ring. Like, that's going to be, this isn't like a fight that we could just continue on talking and not bring up and not talk about, because that's going to be one of the best fights Warriors Cup seen in a long time on the same event.
I talked about how Dimitri Verats just scares the crap out of me, and he's actually a nice guy. Franz Pierre, I don't know what this dude's thinking. I can't read this guy, man, and he is I think you described it perfectly, but a lot of this, he's seen more than you know. Yeah, Muay Thai is challenging, but he's had bigger things that he's had to deal with in his life. When you think about his background, coming from, you know, his home country and everything that it's taken for him to get here, that's one dude that I don't think takes anything in this world for granted.
Franz is a serious dude. That is a serious, and you know, and I've had the privilege, and I call it a privilege, to be around him for so long and have, you know, a small part in his career. You know what I mean? And for me, that's been a blessing, right? To be able to watch him grow as a fighter, as a person. You know, he's unbelievable. He's unbelievable, and he's just going to continue to grow, right? And you know, he's one of those guys that will be at the highest level that he wants, right? Whatever he wants, it's there for him. And I'll be able to say, yeah, I remember back in the day, I had a little part of Franz Pierre, right? Because that's a blessing for me that I got to have a little part of Franz Pierre's story, because that kid's going anywhere he wants, you know? But once again, he's taking the hard fights, right? It's not, like that's, I always I work in boxing. I circle back to boxing, and I watch these boxing fights. I grab the card. I could pick the winner of every single fight that night. You know who's going to win. Or there's a crazy upset, and maybe you have 1 out of 8 crazy upsets, right? It's like, that's not Muay Thai. That's not Warriors Cup. That's not what we do. So it's like every fight, it's like these guys are going into a hard fight that they could lose. Like, there's no easy gimme fights. We don't do it, right? We don't do it. You want that? You go elsewhere for that. There's places for that. There's plenty of places to go get that easy gimme fight. If you want it, go get it. Go get it. There's a phone call away. You need help, I'll let you know. I'll let you know who to call for an easy fight, but it's not us, you know?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that, and Joe Rogan talks about this, and part of the reason why I got involved is that, yeah, I know boxing, but I've never seen anything like Muay Thai, because there's so many damn things that you have to incorporate, whether it's the infighting with the elbows or the sweeps or just the teep kicks, all of that stuff that it may look easy, but it's so complex because there's so many varying things that you have to utilize in order to be an effective fighter. It's not just a jab and a right cross. We refer to it as the 8 limbs, but would you agree that, I talked about Todd Banks, and the first thing that jumped out at me is like, dude, this guy's like, he's sweeping on just about every 10 seconds and eventually knocks the guy out. But there are so many things that you have to master, and so many things that go on in terms of a Muay Thai fight as opposed to any other combat sport.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's a lot, and there's no outs, right? Like even MMA, you watch it, it's like these guys, they're standing. If they don't want to stand, they take it to the ground. It's like they take it to the ground, and you see them, hugging on each other and stalling.
For 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's no stalling. There's no stalling in Muay Thai. Like, it doesn't exist. Like, even like if you watch real Muay Thai, like the ref will yell at you, like, fight. What are you doing? Fight. Get in here. Fight. Like, we're not stalling. We're not taking it easy. There's no rest. It's it. You could be, some fights are more like a chess match and some fights are more like a brawl. But at the end of the day, it's you're fighting. It's it. You're engaged the whole time.
One thing I want you to sort of explain, and I don't want to get too technical with you, but the teep kick, I look at that as just sort of like, it's the equivalent to sort of a jab, right? You're just measuring a guy, trying to get him off balance. But then I see a guy like Dimitri Verats, who we're going to see coming up on September 19th. His teep kick caves in dudes' chest cavities. Like, I mean, it could be just sort of that, yeah, I want to get you off balance. I'm just sort of feeling you out, but it can also like do some serious damage.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate assumption?
It is an accurate assumption. It's the way you throw it, right? So it's like he throws it with authority and power. But like you said, sometimes it's used like a jab. Same thing with a jab, right? So you could throw a really hard jab, a real solid jab, or you could just be using it to set something else up, using it. And most of the time, the teep is used to set something up where you're just off balance, or even you teep the legs. You're setting the timing. You're trying to interrupt the rhythm. That's you keep them away, right? The teep is the jab at long distance, keep them away, and then boom, like you said, when he throws it, he's throwing hard. Power. It's an actual power strike for him. Yeah.
Now he's buckling guys with that teep.
Yeah.
All right, man. Is there anything else we're leaving out here for Warriors Cup 72?
No, we're leaving a lot out for Warriors Cup 72.
Well,
if we went through the whole card right now, we would be here for another 2 hours. So we can't hit all that. But I think I'm really glad we didn't. Let me just take one quick look. I'm really glad we didn't forget about that Franz Pierre fight. It's going to be so serious. You know what I mean? There's a million of them, actually. If we run through it, we'd have to do a whole nother episode.
Well, no, we're going to do another show before.
Yeah, we'd have to go through, we got Christian Dexter, this kid, karate champion, Christian Dexter. That kid, once again, he's going to be world class one day. That kid is special. I see it. He's special. So there's a lot of these fights. I wouldn't be able to do it on in one amount of time. We hit a couple good ones. And I think we'll just take it on to the next one and maybe get a guest for the next episode.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we tease Dexter, the rest of the fights, some of the key fights for Warriors Cup 72. Also, maybe some of the fights that we didn't talk about in Warriors Cup 71. We're going to extend. We didn't want to bring on a guest for our first show. Wanted everyone to meet the Gooch, for those that aren't familiar with James Guccione. And then we'll talk to some fighters and we'll get you ready once again for Warriors Cup 72. But good debut once again.
Sounds good.
We're off. We're obviously going to be doing this throughout the week and get you ready for fights and detail everything that's happening in the world of Muay Thai as well as the Warriors Cup. For my man James Guccione, this is Dan Devone saying until next time, so long, everybody.
Sounds good, Dan. Thank you.